We are sitting down with Bennett Morgan, who is the president of Polaris Industries. Hi, Bennett. Thank you for giving us your time.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Perfect. First of all, you already had Victory motorcycles established back in 1997, and that brand has created itself as somewhat of a cult now already. So what was the idea behind the takeover of Indian and now going to the world with it?
Yeah, after 15 years of experience with Victory, we've achieved successes with Victory that many other manufacturers have not over the last 60 years. But what we found was, as good as we had done with Victory and as good as that product is, it's really the highest quality motorcycle in its class in the world. We were bringing a product to a brand fight. And as we looked around and the Indian brand became available, the Indian brand is so iconic, so well recognized, and really just rings of American V-twin. It is the one brand that legitimately intersects, with the Harley Davidson and the true, American rider. And so really that was the opportunity that Indian brought to the table for Polaris. And so we've been at it for over 3 years now, really being tremendous stewards of the history as well as the future of where we want to take the Indian brand, and it's been a really exciting journey so far.
All right, very good. And Greg Brew, I believe, he has studied the Indian brand, and he singled out the 1940 Indian Chief for the resurrection of Indian, and that's basically served as the inspiration for the three bikes that we see now. Why exactly that one particular model from the 1940? And how has that been for you so far?
Well, again, our strategy, that really Greg and the motorcycle team helped lead, really was driven off. You have this tremendous history, and really the first American motorcycle brand, which was Indian, which many people don't know, and we very much wanted to be tremendous stewards, as I said, of the past, and we looked at some of the most iconic Indian models that resonated, the most dearly with that still fervent Indian customer base, really across the world, which is quite amazing. And there's so many, again, just tremendous styling cues, and we wanted to really be stewards to the past, but then also, as we did that, take a mind's eye to say, what would have happened if, Indian. What would have happened to Indian over the last 50 years. And so we've had a view towards the past, but also very much an eye towards the future. Because with Indian, our strategy has not been to buy a brand and just live in the past. We want to make sure we look forward with that brand. And so really the journey that Greg and the team have gone through is cues of kind of those iconic styling differences that you just know and see in Indian immediately, but then also bring technology and modern production quality really to this fabulous brand.
No, I've ridden the Indian Chief, and I agree with you. It looks really, really nice, and the styling cues go back to the historic models. Absolutely, with you on that. And good that you pointed out technology, because I want to understand that when the 1111 Thunderstroke was being developed, you guys in particular looked at the Chevrolet Corvette, the LS7's engine. What exactly filtered down to the engine that you have now? Or what exactly was the inspiration that you drew from the Corvette's engine?
Well, again, the team looked at a number of, I'd say iconic, brands and engines to really inspire us to say, what should Indian's power plant and heart really be for the future that powers Indian in the future? And they took a number of key styling and design cues to really take, again, the history of the classic V-twin American, air-cooled, push-rod engine, preserve the styling cues, but then put modern technology into it so that you can have this high-performance, high-torque, wonderful sounding, very throaty feel to the engine, and that really was the inspiration behind that.
Right. Okay. And before Polaris took over the Indian brand, the previous owners, they'd always been marketing the Indian motorcycles at somewhat of a premium. Their price points were at least about 35% more than what you guys have. So how has Polaris been able to bring down the costs so much?
Yeah, I think that's really the advantage that Polaris has brought to it. I mean, you have a $4 billion enterprise with the power behind it that has builds industry-leading quality motorcycles, industry-leading quality off-road vehicles, and is builds hundreds of thousands of units and has that production quality and purchasing and engineering and manufacturing capability. So we can take that global supply chain, with our engineering, design, and manufacturing and purchasing prowess, and really put that power behind Indian to provide the highest quality parts and bike in the world at a much more affordable cost as a legitimate original equipment manufacturer. I think that's really the difference from what kind of transpired prior.
Okay, and talking about the family and Victory and Indian together, Victory has always been traditionally priced about 12-15% lower than the Harley Davidson models, and that's clicked really well in favor of Victory. But now that Indian brand is positioned quite at par with Harley Davidson, how do you see the family play happening, and what sort of segmentation do you have between Victory motorcycles and Indian motorcycles?
Yeah, I think from the global launch just a little over a year ago, we're feeling very, very encouraged that both brands have a clear place, and that there's a really differentiated source of volume as we look at the customers. I mean, when you look at Victory, you mentioned the price being a slight. It's still a premium brand versus all other brands, really, other than Harley, but somewhat less than a Harley. But it's really about more motorcycle, long modern styling and flowing lines, and really a high performance, high quality ride experience. Whereas when you look at Indian and you look at the size of the markets and you look at that iconic, kind of American brand, the source of volume really is much more traditionally towards the traditional Harley Davidson owner and customer type. And so really, as you look at it, where Victory tends to compete much more straight up against the Japanese and maybe to a lesser degree the European brands, Indian competes much more directly with the Harley Davidson brand.
Right. And speaking of Harley Davidson's, Steve said a long time back, in fact during the launch of Indian motorcycles, that he would ideally want about 10% of the heavyweight bike market to come away from Harley Davidson and in favor of Indian. How much of that has been achieved? Because it's 3 years now. And
well, the way we really are looking at it is, while we've owned the brand for 3 years, the new motorcycles that are really Polaris inspired and designed with Indian really have been in the market for a little over 6 months. And I think that'll be a journey from that. But I think right now we feel very good about our abilities to deliver and perhaps exceed those over the long term. So I think all systems are go right now.
Okay, not bad. But speaking again more from a business point of view, do you think that with Indian now being positioned pretty much straight away, against Harley Davidson, there will be some sort of cannibalization that's going to happen at either the Victory end or the Indian motorcycles end?
Well, again, I would tell you, just 6 months into the experience from the new bikes, frankly, we have not seen that yet.
Okay.
We're going to watch that and monitor that, but again, as we continue to study the source of volume of where Victory is drawing its owner base from and what their ride experience are previously versus what we've seen on the Indian owners, right now they seem reasonably separate. So I think we're encouraged by that so far. And I mean, we've been at it 8 months in the North American market, and a little less than that really in the Australian and the European markets, but so far so good.
And in the starting when you mentioned the Indian brand being iconic and enjoys a cult status, so how much of that in the communication goes out to the market as being Indian being perceived as really iconic, really cult, and how much of that basically translates into sales, and how much of a marketing push do you give towards the Indian brand?
We've given again, I mean, Indian is it's a jewel of a brand. Maybe I didn't even appreciate the power of it from when we've acquired in 3 years. The passion and frankly the even global awareness of the brand has exceeded my expectations. And so we put a fair amount of marketing muscle behind this. But when you have a brand, I would say as pure and as iconic as Indian, it's a tremendous amount of fun. So we're out there spreading the word, but we're working, as I've said earlier in the interview, very consciously about being tremendous stewards of its tremendous history, but also making sure that the brand and the product are not caught in the past of what Indian was, from the Scouts and some of those great models back in the early parts of the 1900s. But really, what's Indian's future as we move into the 2000s and beyond, and really, where it can take its place, really at the forefront of the motorcycle industry.
All right, perfect. Very short and snappy question to you: why India?
Why India?
Yeah.
India is a tremendous market for us, and it's not a market that we expected that we would conquer, in a day or a year or two. It's a journey, and we look at the market dynamics and the long-term potential. We'll measure success in India over the next decade or so, and you can see from Polaris's moves over the last couple of years. We started our Polaris Indian subsidiary. We've really become the leader in off-road vehicles and are trying to create that power sports culture. We have a joint venture with Eicher Motors, with our EPPL venture, and we're close to delivering a personal transportation vehicle to the Indian market here, over in the upcoming months. And now we're bringing India to complement what we're doing with our off-road vehicles. So we remain very, very bullish on India, and we love the long-term opportunity of this market, and we look forward to the years to come. And
specific to Indian, do you think the Indian market as such has the capacity to, well, it's Indian, the capacity to basically absorb a product like the Indian motorcycles portfolio? Well, I think,
as you well know, I mean, the heavyweight market that the current Indians compete in is it's a very high prestige market, but it's not a very large market in India. So, it's a relatively small market segment today, but, as we said when we got into Victory, we were not just entering the heavyweight cruiser market with Victory, we were entering the motorcycle market. And so let's see what time tells over time. But, I think we'll do well with our initial foray, and hopefully we can build out our capability over the upcoming years.
Okay, so globally, we have seen the motorcycle segment is sort of downsizing. We've got global players now in India. BMW has tied up with TVS to bring out sub 500cc motorcycles, and Harley Davidson has just introduced Street 750, which is again a downsized product. Do you see in the future, do you see yourself going the similar road, or trying to downsize into the product range and playing in the relatively mass segments?
Yeah, I would tell you, since we're launching Indian really this week here, let us enjoy the moment of the Indian launch, because we don't talk about future product development. But, as I alluded to, I think those are natural progressions, for Indian and Victory to move downscale in the market as we kind of fortify our presence, our beachhead in heavyweight, and achieve those share goals. So I think over the long term, that certainly seems plausible.
Okay, and so over the immediate future, what do you see, or what are the realistic target as?
Well, I think as you kind of said, what we will target. In India, really over the first year or two is to exceed 10% share in the segments we compete, and and we'll do that. And frankly, our goal will be similar in all the other markets across the globe. And as we have that success, then we'll look to build out future opportunities to gain additional share or move into new segments.
Okay. Reports say that over about 80% of Indian motorcycles are sold to the guys who've already owned Harley Davidsons. Do you see a similar trend happening in India as well?
I think that when we move to global markets, I think that percentage can be a little lower, because it's a little bit more diverse purchase crowd when you're dealing with in North America, where Harley Davidson is in its own right, it's completely iconic, and 80% shares. That's where you have to get the source of volume.
Exactly.
Internationally, it will be a little less so, but I still think that will be a significant piece of our source of volume.
Okay, and I guess close to about 200 million of Polaris's top line is contributed by Victory motorcycles. Now, together with the Indian coming to the fray, how much do you think the overall motorcycle business is going to contribute to Polaris?
Well, we have big plans for our motorcycle business. We've made major investments through Indian and what we're doing with Victory, and have extensive product plans as we look into the future. And we'd like to see this be a $500 million business between both brands over the next couple of years. And ultimately, we'd like to have a $1 billion motorcycle business by 2020.
Oh, that's a big.
Yeah, they're bullish bulls. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big ask.
Yeah.
And of course, to achieve this, you will also need spreading out into the international market. So which are the markets that you're aiming to be present in the near future?
Well, it's India today. We'll probably target Brazil, will be another key market, and maybe some of the other Latin American markets. Okay. Over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. We're already in North America. We're already in Europe. We're already in Australia. We are just in a similar time frame. Just started to contemplate going into Japan. We're there with Victory, but we're not there with Indian today. Right. Okay. So, the intent is this will truly become a global brand in every sense of the word. Okay.
And apart from your domestic market, the USA, which other market contributes really heavily towards the sales?
For Indian?
Yeah, for India.
Yeah, I mean, today the Australian market's wonderful, and particularly places like Germany and France and the United Kingdom are very, very good European markets as well.
Okay. You told me that you're not really going to talk about product as such.
But you have to ask.
Yeah, I have to ask. So the roadmap till 2020, what do you see Indian doing globally? And where do you see the brand going till 2020?
Well, I think that first and foremost we have to demonstrate that we can gain a successful foothold in the segments we're in, kind of in heavyweight, and do that both in North America and Europe, Australia, India, and all the key markets throughout the world. And then I think logically, the opportunity is to expand into new segments. Right. And I think that's exactly what the plan will be. I think that's as forthcoming as I'll be right now. But to truly be a billion-dollar motorcycle business, I think that it's clear we'll have to operate in segments beyond just heavyweight.
Okay, so you're not ruling out the possibility of downsizing?
No, I'm not. I'm not ruling the possibility out.
All right, perfect. It was really, really nice speaking to you.
Yes.
And have a good trip in India.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Thanks.